Hello, this is Nicole Cervantes, and I'm going to be presenting on chapter 15 of our textbook, which is the first chapter on qualitative research. There was a ton of methods shown in this chapter, so basically what I'm going to be doing is hopefully summarizing each method and just a little definition for each, just so you have an idea of what each of these methods looks like for qualitative research. So first, a little bit about qualitative research. Evelyn Jacob described a qualitative research as a group of scholars who agree among themselves on the nature of the universe they are examining, on legitimate questions and problems to study, and on legitimate techniques to seek solutions. Some of the characteristics of qualitative research. The first is traditions are derived from particular wide-scale theories and writings from the individuals who wrote them. So for instance, right now I'm researching culturally relevant pedagogy, and one of the most significant aspects of the research is who started it, which is Ladson Billings back in the 90s. So basically this step is just talking about how it's important to look at the roots of these different ideas and phenomena. The second characteristic of qualitative research is traditions blend with or borrow from each other. This is meaning that as ideas grow and expand, they might add new ideas, different disciplines, other things along to the ideas. And the third aspect of qualitative research is that it includes a focus on phenomena and selected research approach for studying the phenomena. So as you could see in the textbook, there are three types of qualitative research. The first type is investigation of lived experience. The second type is investigation of society and culture. And the third type is investigation of language and communication. And I believe it was table 15.1 in the textbook, and this gives a really great summary of all of these methods. So that would be a good thing to look back on as a little clues. So first we'll look into the investigation of lived experience, aka type 1 of qualitative research. And under investigation of lived experience, there's cognitive psychology, phenomenology, phenomenographic research, and life history research. So first looking at cognitive psychology, this is the study of structures and processes involved in mental activity and how they are learned or developed with maturation. Sorry for the error there, but possible studies. This is something I've included in quite a bit of these methods, as the textbook showed some of the ways that we could use these methods towards studying. So some possible studies for cognitive psychology are teacher thinking, students' learning processes, and motivation to learn. Oftentimes, the way cognitive psychology is used is through protocol analysis. Protocol analysis is referring to asking people to state all their thoughts while carrying out a task. So for instance, you could ask someone to compose 5 measures of a piece in C major, whatever it is, and then while they're doing that, then you would have them state everything that they're thinking, just so this will help us kind of look into how the brain is processing things and what's happening in their thought process. The next, under type 1, is phenomenology. And phenomenology is the study of the world as it appears to individuals when they lay aside prevailing understanding of the phenomena and revisit their immediate experience of the phenomena. This meaning that all previous knowledge and biases about a certain thing are taken away just to look at exactly what's happening in the moment, to be able to get a look at their perspective at that time. A way to complete the phenomenology study is you would first identify a topic of personal and social significance. This is something we've talked about before, but again, in the textbook they bring it up that it is important that we're looking into things that we're interested in naturally, as this will be easier for us to study. And then next, in the process of the study, select appropriate participants, interview each participant, and analyze the interview data. So how are we going to analyze the data? For phenomenology, there are two ways, through textual description and structural description. Textual description has an account of the individual's perceptions from every angle, and then structural description is an account of regularities of thought, judgment, imagination, recollection that underlie experience of phenomena and give meaning. Some possible studies for phenomenology. There are educational phenomena such as how students experience tests, how students experience a lesson, or how policymakers experience meetings about school reform proposals. And another thing that they talked about in the book about phenomenology as one of the pros is that it's actually very good for people who are beginning to do research and studies, because this is something that pretty much everyone can grasp and get a hold of with the interviewing process, rather than things we'll discuss later such as ethnography. They take quite a bit of knowledge before you can even begin the study. So the next one, different than phenomenology, is phenomenographic research. And phenomenographic research is a specialized method for describing the different ways people conceptualize the world around them. So how I understand this, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I understand it as phenomenology is studying one phenomena and one perspective of that, whereas phenomenographic research is studying a phenomena, but they're looking into different ways people are perceiving it and different variations of that phenomena. Yeah, that's how I see the differences. And then some possible studies for this would be on individuals' thinking, developmental changes in thinking, and changes in thinking that occur as a result of instruction. And then finally, the last part, or the last method for type 1 qualitative research, is life history research. And this is the study of life experiences of individuals from the perspective of how these individuals interpret and understand the world around them. So traditionally, this was actually done, people would study diaries and the writings of other people. But now, currently, we've added in the aspect of interviews and direct observation, looking at a person's life. And then some possible studies that could be done with life history research is teacher development. And there was actually, in the book, if you remember, there was quite a large example of a study on teacher development where they used life history research. So next we'll look into type 2 of qualitative research. And type 2 is investigation of society and culture. The different methods within type 2 are symbolic interactionism, action research, ethnography, cultural studies, and critical theory research, and ethnomethodology. So in the book, they actually don't go into a ton of detail about number 1 and 2, symbolic interactionism and action research. However, they stated in the book that it will be discussed in later chapters. So I'll just give a little summary for those, and then they go into more detail for the others. So symbolic interactionism is a study of how individuals engage in social transactions and how that contributes to the creation and maintenance of social structures in the individual's self-identity. And then action research, that's a self-reflective investigation that professional practitioners undertake to improve the validity and justice of their work. So now moving on to ethnography. This is, I believe it is the most complex of all the methods that we read about. This one definitely takes a lot of consideration beforehand. So a little bit about ethnography. It is the intensive studies of the features of a given culture and the patterns in those features. Some possible studies that could be done with ethnography are real-life settings where culture is manifested, discovering cultural patterns in human behavior, and conveying the perspective of cultural members. So then they go into smaller portions of ethnography. The first is microethnography, and this is the study of small cultural units. So say, for instance, you're studying just the culture of one classroom. That's a very tiny culture, so that would be considered a microethnography. And then there's macroethnography, which is the study of large cultural units. Say if you're studying the entire United States, that's a very large culture, and so that would be macroethnography. And then there's autoethnography, which is studying yourself. Next, moving on, there's cultural studies and critical theory practice. Now the textbook says that these two terms are basically used synonymously. They're very similar ideas, which is why they are grouped together into cultural studies and critical theory practice. So under critical theory research, they said theoretical and a large-scale social structure, whereas cultural studies, they said it was empirically oriented and concerned with small structure, social structure. Now some possible studies that you could use with this are to analyze power relationships, which are often ignored or taken for granted by most educators. And then the last method under type 2 of qualitative research is ethnomethodology. And this is the study of techniques that individuals use to make sense of everyday social environments and to accomplish the tasks of communicating, making decisions, and reasoning within them. Now, ethnomethodology is different than phenomenology. Phenomenology research are primarily concerned with the individual's interpretations of reality, and then ethnomethodologists, they're mainly interested in how groups of individuals develop intersubjective interpretations of reality. Now, some possible studies that you could do with ethnomethodology are understanding how individuals in a local social setting make sense of the setting and work together to create a shared social reality. So last we'll move on to type 3 of qualitative research, and type 3 is investigation of language and communication. And under this, there is narrative analysis, ethnographic content analysis, ethnography of communication, hermeneutics, semiotics, and structuralism and post-structuralism. Again, the first few are not discussed in great detail in this chapter. However, the last few are more. Something I noticed about this type 3 is it is very much more specific than the others. Lived experience and social and cultural. Those were more general and could be applied into many different scenarios, and there are many different studies that could be done within those. However, language and communication, I found that these ones are all very specific, and and there are a few things that could be studied within them. However, it does have its own type within qualitative research. So narrative analysis is used to study the social organizations of the lives of teachers, students, and other groups. Ethnographic content analysis is an examination of the documents found in field setting as reflections of social interactions in the culture. Ethnography of communication is the study of how members of a cultural group use speech in their social life. And then hermeneutics is the study of the process by which individuals arrive at the meaning of any text. So as you can see here, these are very specific and geared towards one very specific study. And then semiotics is the study of how objects come to convey meaning and how sign systems relate to the human behavior. One of the things that they actually mentioned as a possible sign is actually musical notation. So if you were going to look into musical notation, I'm not sure how you would look into that for a study, but this would be under semiotics as it is a sign. Some possible studies are on how educational phenomena involve sign systems to impart information which affect what and how students learn. And then I just put here that the book mentioned that semiotics is actually not often used in education. It's more often used in other fields. And last, we have structuralism and post-structuralism. Structuralism focuses on the systematic properties of phenomena, including relationships among elements of a system. Some of the principles of structuralism I have listed here. You can read through those, but for the sake of time, I'll just allow you to pause the video and read through those to review those. And then we have post-structuralism, and this is the study of systems, especially language as a system, that denies the possibility of finding any inherent meaning in them. And then both structuralism and post-structuralism are systems of signs. And so that was the last of the type 3 of qualitative research, talking about language and communication. And then finally, I had here just some things to think about before we have class on Monday. We'll be discussing a bit about what I've read in the additional reading that I had. But here are the final questions that the author, Robinson, I believe it was, these are the final thoughts that were left off. And so I'd like you guys to kind of read through these, and they're all very similar questions, but they just kind of get your head thinking about these things. So go ahead and read through them and prepare your thoughts, and then we will have a discussion in class on Monday. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. Thank you.